We are back again. It's the end of June, beginning of July. The rains are already coming, and perhaps the temperature is also a little better than before. We are anxious during the rains always. As you know, this month that is welcome. We welcome the rains, of course, but then when it becomes too much, many of the people suffer a lot during the rains. The roads are damaged, the houses collapse, the trees and perhaps the other things also cause a little harm. So we take all these things into consideration, pray for good rains, of course, but at the same time that we may not be damaged much by the heavy downpours. The month of July is a beautiful month of rains, of course, and also many other celebrations that we have. We have starting with the feast of St. Thomas, 3rd of July, and also during the month we have so many other celebrations of Our Lady, the Mount Carmel, 16th of July, and also the Day of the Grandparents, what is normally celebrated, the feast of Joachim and Anne, the feast of St. Ignatius, so many good things in this month. Let me begin with a gospel message, the message of the week. It's about discipleship. Discipleship is just that we follow Jesus. It's not necessary to connect it with the priests, the religious who follow Christ perhaps a little more closely, but every Christian is a disciple of the Lord. And so today's reading gives us what is the meaning or perhaps the content of discipleship. I find 3 themes that are intertwined, the 3 things that go together in our discipleship. The Gospel of Matthew chapter 10 verse 37 to 42 gives a beautiful explanation of what is discipleship. There are 2 things mentioned there. The first one is, anyone who loves his mother, father, brother, sister is not worthy of me. And it follows up with, anyone who does not carry his cross is not worthy of me. And thirdly, the aspect of hospitality or perhaps closeness to Jesus, that when we shelter, we give hospitality to others, perhaps as part of our discipleship, God Himself gives shelter, gives care, and looks after us. So let me begin with the first, perhaps the pointed directive of Jesus. If anyone wants to be my disciple, he has to leave behind his mother, father, brother, sister, his family ties. In that gospel where Jesus calls the first disciples, there's a beautiful small remark that has been made. When the disciples were impressed with Jesus' call, when He said, come and see, St. Peter leaves his father, leaves the boat and follows Jesus. That's the implication today. Perhaps it might look very harsh on the part of Jesus to ask us to leave your parents, your brothers, sisters. But what's the real meaning of it? He doesn't want us to leave them as such, to abandon them as such. But then he who loves his mother, father, brother, sister more than me is not worthy of me. So ultimately, it's the love of Jesus that is more important than love of our parents, the love of the human ties, what we call the blood relations. We cannot give up. It remains. It's part of our history. It's part of our genealogy. It's part of our DNA, we may call it. But then, if your love for your parents, for your brothers, sisters is more than that of Jesus, perhaps Jesus has to say that, go back and look after them. Perhaps when you are independent, you can come. And this is the message, to leave behind your parents, brothers, sisters. Secondly, Jesus says, the one who does not take up his cross is not worthy of me. Once again, it looks something harsh. I won't say sadistic as such, but then so hard on Jesus to take up your cross. What's the meaning of the cross? Cross is something that is come into our life, that is perhaps not given or punished as a punishment to us, but something through which God works out our own solution. The cross of life. The cross of Jesus is the cross of our life. And what is a cross? Perhaps there's something that is unpleasant. There is something that is unbearable. But then I have to go through it. If life was a panacea of all the good things and everything okay, perhaps there wouldn't have been any challenges as such. But heroes are made of those who overcome challenges. And therefore, Jesus says, take up your cross. It's beautiful to meditate on the cross. What is a cross? A cross is something in our life that perhaps it awaits that not only that we pick it up, but we love the cross. We carry the cross, we love the cross. And sometimes it may not be our own cross. We are called upon to carry the crosses of others. In that scene of last sufferings of Jesus when he carries the cross, Simon of Cyrene, he is pulled and asked to take up this cross of Jesus. Perhaps in the beginning he may have grumbled why I should carry someone else's cross. But then we are told it had a lot of soothing effect on him, and he ended up as one of the disciples of Jesus. So my dear friends, I think the cross has much to do in our life. We have to learn to live our personal cross, the cross of our communities, the cross of our families, perhaps what we call a vicarious cross. A vicarious is something that you, on behalf of the others, you take up something so that they have a better life, they have a better existence, they have a better comforts, and perhaps God uses you as Simon of Cyrene to carry the cross of others also in order to follow Jesus closely. The third theme that is there in the first reading of 2 Kings, we find that Elisha is going on his journeys and he is human. He feels hungry, he is tired, and he rests in a particular place. And every time he passes by, he asks the people to give him perhaps little shelter, little water, little food. And so the lady of the house, the rich lady perhaps, she says to her husband, why don't you make a room for the prophet? Because we are benefiting more by the visit of the prophet than he, because he is a holy man. Jesus also tells in the gospel, if you give even a cup of water to these the little ones, it's as good as you have given me. The ones who have given shelter to a prophet will always be benefited, will always be graced with this kind of hospitality that God will give. Ultimately, our discipleship, what's the end of our discipleship? What's the fruit of our discipleship? We would say that God gives us hospitality. God brings us closer to each other and to himself through this opening up of his own house and household to us who follow Jesus. So my dear brothers and sisters, let us take this gospel at heart, that every one of us is a disciple of Christ. And if I would like to come closer to Jesus, Jesus asked me to get little more distant from all those I love, so that Jesus could be my exclusive and only love of my life. And also Jesus asked us to accompany him with the cross of our life, with the cross of Jesus Christ that we carry. And finally, he doesn't disappoint us. He will give us our share of shelter, refuge and comfort, perhaps in a different way, as this theme of hospitality is also developed in today's readings. My dear brothers and sisters, I leave you at this. May the cost of discipleship is very dear, but then its worth is much more.